Hello. How are you all doing tonight? Welcome, welcome. It feels like it's been a little while. So, today we're going to be continuing our book reading of this very special book that we started right before our holiday. Welcome, parrots. Hi, Callus. Hi, Raz. Hi, Metal. Hi, Hasselpoof. Yes, we're going to have a very, very comfy reading time today. The shirt can barely contain. Well, it does the job. Hi, Pink. Pink is actually in the living room right now. Thank you, Callus. Excellent. I wish you all the luck in Elden Ring. So, we should probably recap where we left off. Consume liquid? Yes. TV won't connect to YouTube. What? That's so weird. I don't know how to help with that. Because if you're having problems, then I might be having internet problems. Oh, wait. I'm so sorry. I've disabled some of the redeems for this one, I'm pretty sure. I thought I'd disabled that one as well. Unless I didn't disable it. Let me double check. I thought that this was all disabled from last time. Let me refund you. I've wanted, for this stream, I wanted to reduce, to kind of like not have any of the audio redeems, just because I think I don't think it contributes to the reading aspect of the stream. So, yeah. So the story so far, we were kind of introduced to a number of characters. We were introduced to I can't remember all of their names. We were introduced to different groups of characters. There were the most recent group we met were the Chaos Space Marine Warband of the 10,000 Eyes, I think they were called. Yes, yes. We met Seraphax, the Lord Sorcerer and leader of this Chaos Warband, Baylor, a fallen and uncorrupted Dark Angel Space Marine, and their associate, Markog, the commander of the Dolorous Guard, who is a corrupted Chaos Champion of Slanesh. We were also introduced to Zabriel, who recounted his experience of the fall of Caliban. And lastly, we met the Lion, also known as the Hunter, who, at least we believe it's the Lion. It certainly is the Lion, in all honesty. He is our primary protagonist. He awoke in a very strange world, completely unaware, with no memory, not even any awareness of his self, and he slowly regained his senses in this warp-tainted world. He encountered an old wounded man in fishing in a sea surrounded by shadowy creatures. A watcher, a creature he knew, guided him out. And eventually he found himself in a strange place he was unfamiliar with. He met people and he protected them from beasts, strange corrupted creatures in the wilderness, and he protected them and they guided him to their camp where he encountered the human's protector, who it turns out was also a space marine of his chapter, Legion rather. And yes, British people do enjoy salt and vinegar crisps and chips. Salt and vinegar is like the best flavour for that. Are they the best? Depends on how intense you like them. I prefer McCoy's. McCoy's are the best. Or Pringles. Salt and vinegar Pringles. But McCoy's are definitely the best. You absolutely love salt and vinegar. Everyone should Everyone should try salt and vinegar. Though the best way to have salt and vinegar is to go to your local chippy and get salt and vinegar chips. Chonky deep-fried chips with a fried cod fillet. That is a tasty treat. God, I haven't had that forever. I should have some at some point. Pink, do you want to get us fish and chips sometime? Okay, let me check my redeems. Make sure everything is as I expected it to be, and then we shall continue this story. Now, there was one last thing. When the hunter met this other space marine, whose name we don't know yet, they opened fire. And that, I believe, is where our story continues. Let's see. I think that is all of the redeems. Okay, so any and all redeems I will be catching up on between chapters because I don't want to interrupt the narrative flow. So we're going to be focusing primarily on storytelling this stream. Okay. So I'm not ignoring the redeems. I am fully aware that they are there. And I am keeping up with chat. But I will, I'll continue. I will follow up everything as we get into the next, as we conclude our chapters. God, I love this little ribbon bookmark. It's such a cool thing. And thank you for the follow, Winter's Nix. I hope that you enjoy the stream and our lovely community. Be sure to join the Discord for lots of memes. What the crisps I enjoy? McCoys or Pringles. Walkers are okay too, but they don't have quite as intense a flavour. But yes, shall we continue with Chapter 6 of The Lion, Son of the Forest? The Space Marine opens fire and bolt shells roar through the air, but they do not strike their target. This is not because the Space Marine's aim is inaccurate. As such, he expertly placed his shots where he saw the hunter. It is just that the microsecond between the Space Marine's hands starting to twitch and his transhuman reflexes bringing his weapons up, the hunter has already moved. The hunter dives to his right, because there are people immediately to his left, and although he could avoid them, he does not wish to draw the Space Marine's shots towards them. They are not as fast, as resilient, or as well-armed as he is, and even being winged by a bolt shell would be fatal. His hands touch down first as he finishes his leap some 20 feet away, cushioning his impact and distributing his weight. He pivots slightly on his left hand to bring his legs around. They are in contact with the ground for a mere moment before he pushes off again. The hunter leaves the ground in another stunning fast bound. Lion L. Johnson, Primarch of the 1st Legion, collides with the Space Marine and bears him to the ground. The Space Marine tries to bring his weapons up, but the lion casually slaps them out of his hands. Thoughts are still sleeting through his forebrain, but enough found their homes for him to remember who he is and what has happened to him. Caliban, the Order, his father, his brothers, Horus, that wretched traitor Curse, the thrice-damned monster, noble, tragic Sanguinius, and brash, swaggering Russ, and the infuriating Robut. Watching his traitorous brother's home planets burn at his orders, watching Terra burn because he was too late, returning to Caliban and watching it burn around him, facing Luther and the tidal wave of grief that struck him when he realized what his old friend had become. A tidal wave which strikes him once more and nearly bears him under, and then, nothing. Just the forest and the river. The lion pins the Space Marine down before he can reach for the combat knife or the chainsword at his belt. He glances down at the black armor, battered and worn, still carrying signs that would mean nothing to those outside the Legion, but which to the lion are as clear as the faces of the people around him. Knight of the 2nd Destroyer Squad of the 3rd Company. 15th Chapter. Diakon of the Order of the Three Keys. The Initiate of the Dreadwing. More memories rise to the surface, furnishing him with the name that belongs to those ranks. Zabriel. The Space Marine's expression cannot be seen behind the faceplate of his armour, but Lionel Johnson feels his struggling stop. It is replaced by a different sort of tension, however one which the lion can still sense. Warriors of the Legionis Astartes do not know fear, but something not entirely dissimilar has Zabriel in its grip, if the Primarch is any judge. "Get off him!" someone screams, 10 feet behind the lion, and 3 to his right. "He is our protector. He is a traitor," the lion growls, the words resonating in his throat and solidifying in his brain as they pass his lips. Yes, a traitor. Just like Luther, the lion remembers the designations of all those he ordered back to Caliban, and Zabriel's squad was amongst them. A traitor who has now tried to murder me for a 2nd time. "You were the traitor!" The Space Marine rages from beneath him. "You abandoned us, abandoned Caliban, and abandoned the Imperium." "Lies," the lion snarls, but Zabriel's words latch their claws into freshly reopened wounds. The lion knew he did not intend to abandon the Imperium, but how many times did he question himself whether what he was doing was the correct course of action? Chemos, Nuceria, Barbarus, they all died at the hands of his sons in an attempt to draw the traitors away from Terra and open a path for Sanguinius and the Blood Angels. Should the Dark Angels have forged on regardless? Should the lion have turned his legion into the spear tip favoured by the sons of Horus and gone for his treacherous brother's throat? Would that have saved his father's life? Lies? Then where have you been for 10,000 years? Zabriel demands. The lion opened his mouth to call him a fool, but the words won't come. He wants to demand Zabriel repeat himself, but that would be pointless. The lion heard him perfectly. The words themselves are not in doubt. It has the meaning behind them. It is the meaning behind them that has paralyzed Lionel Johnson into unfamiliar indecision. He swallows, sits back, and releases Zabriel's arms. "Take your helmet off." "What?" "Take your helmet off," the lion growls, "or I will remove it for you." For a moment, the lion thinks Zabriel is going to go for his weapons, but then the Dark Angel reaches up and disengages his helmet as instructed. The lion is already reassessing the state of the traitorous son's war gear. It is battered, yes, but battered and repaired imperfectly, time and time again. These are not the marks of one giant combat, but the result of repeated use, far beyond when Legion protocol would dictate that the parts be replaced. Zabriel lifts his helmet clear, and his face is revealed. The lion searches his memory and finds a near match. Zabriel, Terran, skin a cool mild brown, hair black, and eyes a dark sapphire. A veteran from the earliest days of the Legion, he was already a mature Space Marine by the time the lion took command. The face revealed is heavily lined. The dark hair is shot through with grey, and multiple small keloids mark the skin where Zabriel had been injured and is scarred. The lion has never seen a Space Marine this old. Some of the enhanced, like Lorgar's wretch Corferon, yes, those warriors were never a Space Marine's equal, being raised up while older and lacking the advanced gene-smithing that kept the ravages of time at bay so effectively. A true Space Marine, though? The lion reached up slowly with one armoured hand, and rubs gently at the lines he knows mark his own face. He had no idea what he was looking at when he saw his reflection in the river. Nothing with which to compare it. Now he remembers how he looked the last time he saw himself, and he wonders. He shakes his head, clinging to what he knows. No, 10,000 years is an impossibility, a Primarch. I cannot be sure how we would age, but a space marine would be long dead, I am certain of it. The warp storm scattered us, not just through space, but also through time, Zabriel says. I re-emerged perhaps 400 years ago. 400 years of running and hiding from my little brothers, he adds scornfully. We were always single-minded once we engaged a foe, but 10,000 years of hatred in an attempt to extinguish guilt. Truly, my Lord Lion, you taught your sons well. What mockery is this, the Lion snarls. We returned to Caliban from Terra, only to find the system held against us. You opened fire on us without warning, and your leaders made pacts with... He became aware again of the people around them, too scared to get close, but too fascinated to draw back. Some of them are within earshot, for sure, with powers I will not name, he finishes, lowering his voice. I cannot explain how I have come to be here, for my memory was impaired until I laid eyes upon you, and some things are still hidden from me. But one thing is plain. As soon as you saw me, you tried to kill me again. Why should my loyal sons not hunt traitors like yourself? Zabriel sighs and rests his head back on the ground, his aspect of one who is weary beyond all reason. I know nothing of the powers of which you speak. I had no contact with our leaders, Luther, Astelan, and the others, save briefly and in passing. I was not party to any order to open fire upon your fleet. But as for my reaction to seeing you, he raises his head and looks the lion in the eye. It is not an experience the lion is used to. Even in his old memories, there were few who could hold his gaze for any length of time. I saw you once, only after you ordered us to Caliban. The fleet was raining fire upon us, and our brothers had landed to make war. I caught a glimpse of you, for the first time in years, as you cut your way through some new recruits who had never laid eyes upon you, and whose first true battle wearing the armour of the First Legion was against their Gene Father and his executioners. They died in moments, and you pressed on, presumably in search of Luther. I did not see you again. However, even with what came afterwards, even when the planet splintered and the warp reached out to seize us all, it was the expression on your face that remained within me. And for all the long years since, it was hatred and rage, pure and unfettered. You were intent upon our deaths, and we knew better than any others that once you set your mind to something, you could not be deterred. When I saw you there, having walked out of the forest, I could not mistake your features despite the age that has overtaken you, for your face has haunted my dreams for centuries. Either you were a chaos-spawned mockery of my Primarch, spewed forth from the great rift to torment me, or you were the lion here to finally kill me. I was prepared to tolerate neither without a fight. The lion searches Zabriel's face with his eyes and stretches out with all his senses, but he can sense no falsehood. The Space Marine's twin heartbeat does not betray him. And there is no scent of deception, although to be sure, having been born to the ground and disarmed by a Primarch would trigger a fight or flight reflex in anyone, against which background the subtle sense of heightened anxiety would be difficult to make out. The lion is bitterly aware that he has not always been the best judge of character. On Diamat, he handed siege machines over to Perturabo in the mistaken belief that his brother was going to use them to crush Horus's nascent rebellion. Instead, those guns spelled doom for the Raven Guard and Salamanders at Isfahan 5. How much grief and bloodshed could have been spared had he been able to trust Guilliman from the moment the Dark Angels arrived through the ruin storm at Macragge? Instead, both of them kept their secrets, with disastrous consequences. And on and on. Should he have seen what Lorgar's obsessive love of their father concealed? Should he have recognized that Angron's rage would never be satisfied? Should he, more crucially, have perceived the flaws in Horus Lupercal? It was not in his nature. The Lion and the First Legion had always faced outwards, searching for the danger and the darkness beyond humanity's borders. Not looking over their shoulders, but it is a failure that gnaws at him nonetheless. But how could the lion be expected to see the worm inside the heart of one of his greatest diplomats and strategists in humanity have ever known, when he had not even been able to foresee the thoughts and actions of his own legion? He has no answers. None of his brothers are here, even the ones he could trust. He must, as he so often has, do this alone. You say I abandoned the Imperium, he says, his voice low and dangerous. Do you swear to me by whatever you hold most dear that you remained loyal, that whatever the allegiances of your commanders, you, Zabriel, loved the Emperor and humanity, and that you only raised your hand to your brothers and to me because you thought you were betrayed in turn? Zabriel's eyes still do not leave his. I swear it. The lion hesitates. But how can he decry his gene-son for not realizing the failures of his commanders, when the lion himself had never detected his own brother's treachery until it was too late? Besides which, these people consider Zabriel to be their protector, which at least implies he has not fallen to some sort of darkness, as the heretics of Horus' rebellion. Your story of 10,000 years is hard to accept, the lion says, but I believe these words. He rises and reaches down to offer a hand to Zabriel, a gesture as much as it is assistance, for a Space Marine needs no help to get to his feet. Zabriel does not move. And do you also swear? Lionel Johnson frowns. Swear what? Do you swear to me, by whatever you hold most dear, that you remained loyal, that you, the lion, loved the Emperor and humanity, and that you only raised your hand to your gene-sons because you thought you were betrayed? The lion growls deeply in his throat at being questioned by one of his warriors, but he holds his tongue. It seems he has much to learn, and Zabriel's obvious age immediately suggests that he may know more than any of the humans of Kamarth. Besides, the lion has no reason not to give the honest answer beyond that of stubborn pride, and he has seen how that can tear the galaxy apart. I swear it, he says. Zabriel reaches up to accept his hand, and the lion pulls him to his feet. He realizes a moment later that Zabriel's eyes are moistening with tears. So pointless, the Space Marine mutters to himself. If there were any traitors, they were not who I thought. We waged war upon ourselves for no reason. Zabriel, the lion says seriously, I must know our situation. What of the Imperium? What of my brothers? What of my legion? Zabriel snorts a laugh that is without humour. Where to begin? An exact date is difficult to ascertain, even for someone who has been counting the passage of time for 4 centuries. The Emperor remains interred on the Golden Throne, or so his subjects believe. I certainly cannot say for sure one way or the other. He is worshipped as a god. He is what? Zabriel shrugs wearily. The Imperial Creed, the ecclesiarchy, is just as fanatical as the bastard word-bearers were in our day. Only they have the full power of the Imperium behind them now. To deny the Emperor's divinity is to be sentenced to death. I believe most Space Marines have some clemency on this issue, but I have little opportunity to engage any in conversation. Every person around you considers him a god, and I simply keep my own counsel on the matter. The lion closes his eyes. I asked myself in the aftermath of the Siege of Terra whether or not the so-called victory was worth the cost. Now I wonder if we won at all. He opens them again. How did my brothers allow this? They are gone, Zabriel says with a sigh. All the loyalist Primarchs were merely a memory by the time I was spat out by the warp. Be assured that I went looking for information, desperately trying to find some link to the life I knew, but I cannot even tell you who was the last to fall or how it happened. Some say they are dead. Some say they disappeared. Some believe in the Primarchs only as figures of myth and legend. The Imperium is now ruled by the High Lords of Terra. The lion's hands curl into fists without any conscious thought, and he grits his teeth. He remembers the misery he felt when he learned of Ferris's death, and Corax's and Sanguinius's. It is better to be told all of his remaining brothers' deaths in one go, rather than seeing them fall or fade one by one. He is uncertain, but he doubts it. And my legion? Rearranged by order of Lord Guilliman, Zabriel informs him neutrally. All the legions were dissolved into individual chapters. The Dark Angels remain, as a force of 1,000 or so, with many other successor chapters affiliated to them. Guilliman. Lionel Johnson hisses, his grief abruptly overtaken by blistering rage. Never content with the work of others, he even wanted to improve on the designs of our father. I should have dealt with him when he first raised a hand to me on Macragh. Why could it not have been him who fell instead of Sanguinius? He inhales sharply. I must go to Terra. If my father is still on the Golden Throne, as you say, then if there is any scrap of life still in him, any spark of his consciousness left, I will see him. Zabriel shakes his head. Such a thing is not possible. At least, he adds, narrowing his eyes, I would not consider it so. I do not know how you came to be here. The lion thinks back to his awakening by the river. The forests were definitely not those of Kamarth. Now he considers it, he realizes that they really were the forests of Caliban. But he has no idea how he came to be there, or how there turned into here. That is still something of a mystery to me as well. But why is travel to Terra not possible? Has humanity lost the use of the warp? Did all the navigators die? Nothing so prosaic, as Zabriel says. Did Halen and Sutik tell you anything of why the people of Kamarth are reduced to this? He gestures with one hand, taking in the camp around them. They say the sky opened, and the bastards came. The lion remembers. That it twisted everything, even the stars, and that I would see it when the sun went down. Accurate enough, Zabriel says. Dusk is nearly upon us. If you will wait until then, my explanation will be more easily understood. The lion considers it. His instinct is to press for more information as soon as possible, but he can practically feel the cracks running through his soul. He lost consciousness fighting the man he considered a brother, and he awoke to find news that 10,000 years have passed, and his true brothers are all dead. He is well aware that this is likely to be just the beginning of the revelations, and as any good warrior knows their limit. Memories are still returning to him as it is. It will do him no good to further pressure his psyche by trying to absorb 10,000 years of history in one go. Besides, there is another more sinister possibility, that this entire experience is something concocted by the foul powers that corrupted Horus in order to torment the lion, showing him the final ruin of his father's vision. If that is the case, then he will bide his time and wait for the flaws of the illusion to show. I still require a knife, he announces to the group at large, turning away from Zabriel. The people shrink back from him in fear and awe, and not a little uncertainty as he strides towards the corpse of the mutated beast. You cannot eat the meat of such a thing, Lord, someone pipes up, and gets nudged in the ribs. Well, we can't. I have no intention of eating it, the lion declares. He flexes his fingers as long-ago hunting trips on Caliban come to the fore of his mind. A simple work of skinning a kill, even with a knife that is too small in his hands, occupies and calms the lion's mind. The blade is marked with a hand-scratched aquila, and while it is a devotional symbol at these times, you find that he can think of it simply as a reminder of his father. He pays little attention to the mood of the people around him, although he is aware that some are fearful of him after he bested their protector, while others are encouraged that they now have an even more formidable warrior with them. He barely notices as the sun's light, already muted by the leaves and trunks of the trees, disappears completely. It's only when he hears Zabriel approaching that he starts to consider why that is. It is true that his eyes are sensitive, far more than those of a human, but even so, the lion looks up, peering through the gaps in the canopy. He has seen the thick band of the Milky Way from many worlds in his life, but this is not what leers down from the night sky above him now. It is mainly green, but there are other colours there too, some of which defy description. It looks like someone has taken the biggest axe ever created to the galaxy and left a long, ravening wound in its wake. This is, I presume, what will keep me from terror, he asks. Yes, Zabriel replies quietly. The Great Rift. So far as we know, it splits the entire galaxy in two. But since the Astronomicon is obscured and warp travel is impossible to undertake safely for more than a few light years at a time, actually finding out is not easy. Similarly, astrotelepathy is extremely limited. Even though we are not in the rift, the warp is so disturbed that any form of long-range communication is virtually impossible. If not actively dangerous to those involved, some claim the rift has actually swallowed the rest of the galaxy, but I do not believe that, he continues, although I admit I have no evidence with which to support that conviction. The ruin storm come again of sort, the lion mutters. Memories flash up, stars the colour of blood, demonic fortress walls, the width of solar systems, and the bloated, monstrous shape of the Veritas Ferrum. He banishes them again. So we are cut off from terror, and the centre of the Imperial Tower. Warp travel is difficult and dangerous, astropathic communication likewise. The fabric of the Imperium has, I suspect, come apart, and Reavers have taken advantage? Indeed, Zabriel confirms, Xenos and Chaos alike. The bastards is how the people of Kamath refer to the warband which descended upon their planet and ruined it. Although they refer to themselves as the 10,000 Eyes, mutants, heretics, and some twisted Astartes. I came to this planet in secret before the Great Rift opened, since it was garrisoned by a chapter of Space Marines who had no link to the Dark Angels, and therefore my little brothers would find it harder to persecute me here, even if they learned of me. The Bastion was the first target of the Renegades' attack, and it did not survive. The people of the planet, who were not killed or enslaved, now lived like this. I stumbled into this group and have done my best to protect them, since I can neither leave this world nor summon aid. I do not even know if there is any aid to summon. I have lived like this before, the lion says. Isolated outposts in a forest, surrounded by malicious, intelligent beasts that would kill us if they got the chance. You are a Terran, Zabriel, not a Calibanite. Do you know what I did in that situation? You organized the people of your world and exterminated the beasts, Zabriel says, nodding. The tales were famous. The lion takes a deep breath. And I will do so again. He was the first, the son who did whatever was asked of him, whatever the cost. He destroyed the nightmares of the galaxy. He annihilated rebellions. He obliterated worlds in his father's name. All in service of a grand vision that died on the tips of Horus's claws aboard the vengeful spirit. You seek to forge a new Imperium? Zabriel asks. The lion growls in response. The memory of Robut's folly still rankles. No, only my father had the capacity to do that. Now the galaxy burns, my brothers are gone, and I am cut off from terror. He pauses, but the lion has never lacked decisiveness. If all that I know of my father's work has been destroyed, then I shall return to what I knew before, keeping people safe. He wipes the knife clean and tucks it into his belt. It is a tiny thing compared to him, but only a fool dismisses a tool solely because of its size. My father was a conqueror, and I became a conqueror on his behalf, but that is not my nature. I kill enemies, and all of humanity's enemies are my enemies. I shall demand no promise from the people of Kamath, and certainly no worship, he spits the word. But I will kill their oppressors. They may follow me or not, as they wish. You intend to attack the 10,000 Eyes? Zabriel asks. I take it they still have a presence on this world, since the humans are fearful of being noticed. They do, Zabriel looks away, then grimaces. Very well. I can lead you to their closest stronghold, if that is what you wish. Will you fight? The lion asks. It is a strange question to ask a space marine, but these are strange times. Zabriel is old and weary, and quite obviously cannot bring himself to fully trust the lion yet, just as Lionel Johnson does not fully trust him. I was a destroyer, Zabriel replies, still looking away at something the lion cannot see. I eradicated humanity's enemies with everything our legion could bring to bear. I now have nothing more than a pair of bolt pistols and a chain blade, and so I have not brought this filth to battle, since I knew I would be overwhelmed, and any protection these people might have from roving bands would be gone. However, if the Lord of the First is going to war, he looks back at the lion once more and meets his eyes. Then yes, I will fight, my lord. End of chapter 6. Right, let me catch up with chat. Guys. Small, I already am the bean. Look at me. I am a bean. I will refund you your points. Hi, Small. Thank you for giving me a shout out, Callus. Thank you for the gift sub, Reaper. And McCoy's is spelt McCoy's. MCCOY''S. McCoy's. The best crisps. The bean has returned. I never went. Also, hi, Kyun Kitsune. Yes. I hope you guys enjoy. I hope you guys like book reading. I'm kind of tired after work, so we'll probably do a couple more chapters. We won't stay up too late tonight. We are reading the limited edition copy of The Lion, Son of the Forest, which is the story of the first Primarch of the Space Marines' return. It's a very fancy book. This is the limited edition copy, signed by the author. There are only 2,000 of these in the whole world, and I was very, very lucky. This is number 261 of 2,000. I'm glad you guys like my reading. I always thought like it would be a nice kind of stream idea to have, but I wasn't really sure how it would ever go down, in all honesty. More coffee. Of course I noticed you, Reaper. I notice everything. I see. No one can hide from me. I'm super excited for this. I love the way Mike Brooks has written it. Everything constantly feels like it's moving forward, and there's a sense of urgency to everything. Nothing hides from me. No. You're asking me for the 5th time? Did I not type it in chat? Did I not type it in chat? I thought I did. I did. Bean is Sauron. I am the Dark Lord. None shall escape. Everything is almost pondering, but every moment of it is impactful and stressful. I feel like it very much carries the mood of the lion, our primary protagonist. Everything feels like he's just woken up and has just been rammed with all this information, and his whole world, as he knows it, has been destroyed. And he just has to start again with next to nothing. It's a really big shock, and it very much feels it. I love this author. I've never read a book by Mike Brooks before. It feels really, really nice. Am I going to read Future by Glukowski? I feel like this has been asked in chat before. I may do. I really just want to... I want to finish this first. Snap back to reality. Oops, there goes humanity. That's exactly what's happened, though. Is it not? Is that not exactly what's happened in this story? But yes, let us continue. I don't feel like it looks like I'm about 20% through the whole book. It doesn't feel like I am. It feels like it's only just started. But at the same time, it also feels like a lot. A lot. There's a lot. You love Glukhovsky. I don't think I've ever read a Glukhovsky book. There are some grapey moments, but that's kind of showing real humanity. Perhaps. Perhaps. I'm just thoroughly enjoying this book. I hope you guys are enjoying it with me. Every Monday we're going to do this and read this book until we finish. Then I'm probably going to read something else after. I quite like doing the reading streams. They're comfy. Anyway, onwards. Chapter 7. The Lord of the First was back. In some ways, he was just as I remembered him. In others, he was very different. You cannot forget the face of a Primarch. With the possible exception of that of the Alpha Legion, I had laid eyes on 4 besides my own. Mortarion of the Death Guard, Leman Russ of the Space Wolves, Fulgrim of the Emperor's Children, and Horace Lupercal, and each of their features was burned into my memory. Or at least their features as they were then. In the days of the Great Crusade, before we were exiled back to Caliban, I had no idea how Horace, Mortarion, or Fulgrim had changed when in the grips of chaos. The lion, however, had aged. I did not know how. It seems that he did not either, as he claimed to have no memory of what happened to him since the destruction of Caliban. Had the Dark Angels kept him in a form of imperfect stasis for some reason? Had he merely slept for 10,000 years and was simply how a Primarch's physiology responded to 100 centuries? Nonetheless, I still knew him the moment I laid eyes upon him. Grey of hair and lined of face though he might be. His armour was different to that which I remembered. But his hair, his mannerisms, his aura, however you wanted to put it, were unchanged. He was my gene-sire. And I would have known him had his face been a mass of scar tissue and had been clad in beggar's rags. Lionel Johnson drew the eye through his glory and his strength, but repelled it through his grim manner. His nature invited adulation, but his character cautioned distance. To speak to him was to become immediately crushingly aware that your words were being measured and weighed against his standards for what was worthy of his time and attention. He was a being of concentrated and furious purpose, and regardless of how or why he had awakened and returned in the aftermath of the great rift opening across the galaxy. I had never been one to trust in portents or omens, but this felt like something I could not ignore. I forswore my legion long ago, when the rest of it tried to murder me for no reason I could ascertain. I had spent the centuries since my return to the material realm evading the paranoid, spiteful, vengeful descendants of the legion in their various different forms. The lion had no authority over me any longer, even if I believed his assertion that he was the betrayed, and had only attacked Caliban when his forces had been attacked unprovoked. That was not sufficient to restore my loyalty. I had been alone for too long, too used to making my own decisions and surviving based on my own instincts, to readily surrender my will to that of another. He was still my gene-sire, but he had no hand in my creation. Besides, although I was no longer truly human, is it not a human trait to outgrow the authority of a parent? Therefore, it was not duty, fear, loyalty, or love which compelled me to offer my aid to the Lord of the First when he declared he would make war on the 10,000 Eyes. It was something greater. It was faith, not a religious faith. I still detested the worship of the Emperor as a god by the misguided humans who populated the Imperium. This was something primal, deeper, and far less prescribed. It was the sensation that the lion was here, now, at this time, for a purpose. His reappearance, exactly when not just the Imperium, but also humanity itself, faced its greatest threat since the Horus Heresy, felt like too much of a coincidence. I have heard sorcerers and psychers and charlatans alike speak of the future, of destiny, and of fate. But this was the first time I could say I felt anything like that at work. I did not know where it would lead, but I knew I had a role to play beyond that of a lone, weary warrior guarding a ragtag group of refugees against a threat he could not repel if it descended in force. We did not move on that first night. The great beasts of the forest were more active in the darkness, and although the lion had little fear of them, the camp would be more vulnerable without us there. Besides which, there was an increased chance of drawing attention to ourselves if we were attacked by predators and had to defend ourselves as we approached the traitors. Better to move in the day, when what light the sun managed to throw down through the canopy kept some of the forest's more dangerous denizens in their lairs. I say more dangerous because I had little doubt that following his arrival, the title of most dangerous went to the lion. We left with the first light of dawn. My original chainblade had been lost some 300 years before in a fight with Eldari renegades. I had taken my current one from a member of the laughably named Angels of Redemption when I turned their attempted ambush of me against them. 30 years later, however, my two Tigris pattern bolt pistols had been with me since the Great Crusade, and were still functional despite their age, although my ammunition was low. Resupplying such standard issue weapons had been easy enough in the days when the Imperium still existed, even for a fugitive such as myself, but there was always someone not averse to selling illegal or restricted munitions to a cloaked and hooded giants. Since the Great Rift had opened, I had been reduced to scavenging from armories not completely looted by the invaders, or taking ammunition from the weapons of those I killed, hoping it was not too tainted. The lion had a knife he had been given for skinning his kill, but no other weapon. None of the firearms present in camp, mainly auto pistols and stub guns, with one ancient and highly prized shotgun owned by a woman named Rena, would fit his hand, and he had no wish to deprive anyone of their scant means of defence. It felt like folly to consider an assault on an enemy while so ill-equipped, but I found myself oddly calm at the prospect. I was with a Primarch of the Emperor, a being whose like had not walked the galaxy for millennia, and none were better suited for the task that awaited us. Kamath had been one of the more advanced imperial worlds on which I had spent time, and the populace did not view their transhuman guardians and overlords with the superstition of a more primitive folk, who might consider them gods or divine warriors. As such, I knew that the Space Marine station here, who had fought bravely against what turned out to be overwhelming numbers, had been the Ruby Crescents. Kamath was an outpost planet, not their home world, but the locals had honoured them that it might well have been. Their bastion, Red Moon Keep, stood in noble isolation atop lonely Mount Santic, a long extinct and now somewhat crumbled volcano, the slopes of which were still thickly forested. There was one road leading down from it, which ran off towards the city of Humian Falls, some 30 miles distant. The lion and I did not venture onto it. He paused as we crested one of the ridges that led up to the volcano's sides and looked out across the forest. Even from this elevation, we could see out over the huge flat expanse of landscape, for Mount Santic was the only natural highland within view. Somewhere to the east wound the mighty Humia River, cutting through the forest until it reached the city. "That is where your refugees came from?" he asked, pointing to the Humian Falls. "Yes," I replied. It almost looked like a forest in its own right, a forest of crystal flecks, ferrocrete, and metal that glinted faintly under the sun. Its perimeter was protected by an ion field which incinerated any plant material that touched it. Otherwise, it would have been overrun by the forest within a year, as has happened now, the lion observed. Many of the city's impressive towers and manufactoria had been devastated by the Chaos Assault, but the smothering green I could make out, even from the distance, hinted that Kamoth was still in the process of reclaiming it on its own terms. That was nothing brought about by the ruinous powers. Kamoth has always been hostile to humans. It was only the valuable compounds that could be harvested from the forest which made the struggle to live here worthwhile, and only the fact that those compounds came from the natural synergy of different plants that had prevented the Imperium from trying to farm them in a much more managed manner. In Humian Falls, as with other tropical cities, the ruling elite had been the families whose techno-magic possessed the fastest, most efficient extraction and purification methods. And these shades in the canopy, the lion said, pointing out great swaths of discoloration in the green sea below us, are they natural? I have not made a detailed study of the planet's biology, I admitted, but it is my belief that they are not. Deadly though the forest is, some of the locals were familiar with it to an extent, and as we have moved through it, they have warned us away from areas they considered to be tainted. Chaos has this planet in its grip, then, the lion muttered, but it has not closed its fists completely. I said nothing. To me, the new variations of Kamoth's flora were a little different to some of what I had seen in places on Caliban, but I had no intention of provoking the lion's wrath by voicing this thought. The similarities were not lost on me, however. Strange that the lion should come by means he could not explain, and after an absence he could not remember, to a world that was not so different to the world on which the Emperor found him. The lion began to move again, slipping through the vegetation with the careless expertise of one to whom forests were his natural environment. I followed behind as well as I could, having already learned that his route would by far be the easiest one. I would leave most humans behind in seconds in such terrain, but my progress is graceless, a product of brute force and direct speed. The lion flowed between the trees, leaving barely a trace of his passing. Had he not been matching his pace to my own, I would have already lost him. Should we expect patrols? He asked as he moved. I have largely avoided this area, I replied, but I do not believe this filth are that organized. Sometimes they send rampaging parties into the forest to hunt for survivors, or set fires and hack at trees if they find none. But those appear to be at random, besides which, I added, the forest has no more love for them than it does for the Imperium. Parts of Kamoth's jungles may be truly corrupted, but even the rest will try to strangle or eat anything that passes through it, without care for what powers they are allied to. The traitors know better than to wander without reason. All the better to take them by surprise, the lion said. He stepped around an area of ground and continued on. It was not until it was almost on it that I saw the dangling, thread-like constrictor vines, wire-thin, but incredibly strong. I only escaped my first encounter with such a plant through the luck of having one hand free, with which I could use my chainsword. Do you have a plan of attack? I asked. Eradicate them, the lion said without turning. I cannot plan further until we see the terrain. He paused for a moment and looked back at me. My brother Sanguinius used to talk about fate. He knew all the time. He knew the time and manner of his own death. I still find such a thing hard to countenance, but he inhaled, exhaled, and focused on me. It was disquieting to suddenly be the true center of his attention. Perhaps my brother's destiny was set, whereas others are not, Lionel Johnson said. I certainly claim no foresight as exhibited by him, or that wretch Kurz, for that matter. But I find it hard to believe that you and I survived the death of a planet, Sabriel, only to fall here. I shrugged more nonchalantly than I felt. I accept my death the moment I became a Space Marine. I've expended so much effort avoiding it these past centuries, only because there seemed no worthy cause for which to give my life. The lion's lined face darkened. I have no use for that manner of fatalism. This is no worthy cause, merely a task that must be completed. I expect you to still be living once we are done here, Zabriel of Terror. He turned and resumed his ascent of the ridge line, which would bring us onto the volcano itself. I hurried after him, feeling chastened, yet with an odd kernel of hope nestling at my core. The lion was practically alone and virtually unarmed. On a world he did not know, with no prospect of aid, and arrayed against a foe of unknown number and lethality. Yet he did not view what we were doing as some kind of noble last stand, a mission to inflict as much damage as possible on the enemy and give our death some meaning. To him, this was what? A start? Prelude to great work? My time since emerging from the warp storm had not just been spent in hiding. I'd done my best to act according to my nature and purpose where I could, protecting the citizens of this ridiculous new Imperium against threats. Some of those I aided had no idea who or what I was. Most of the rest knew better than to inquire too closely. My interventions had been, by necessity, minor, though. The lion appeared to have much larger things in mind. Despite my misgivings about myself, the galaxy in which we found ourselves, and the being that was my gene-sire, I discovered that I was eager to see what we, could achieve. End of chapter 7. Hi, Dammy. Welcome. Welcome. That was quite a short chapter. I liked that. I feel like when we get a Zabriel chapter, I feel like it's a completely different. The tone feels completely different to when the lion is the protagonist, and it's quite nice. I very much like how the writing style changes to reflect the different character's point of view. How are you doing, Demi? I have consumed the liquid, and we shall stretch. Yes. I imagine being a Primarch changes the tone of the entire Warhammer universe. Yeah, I suppose you're right there. Honestly. Oh, I can't wait. On the subject of Primarchs, on Friday, we will be building our protagonist. I mean, I say this. I mean, I've actually got two. I have two. I've got the artwork. I've got the artwork from the other one that I've opened there. I don't know what I'm going to do with the extra art panels, though. I was very lucky. Very, very lucky. But yes. One of them I'm going to kit bash and turn into Marbus of the Fallen Angels. And the other I'm just going to build as the Lion. I'm going to change it a bit, though. Like, I'm gonna trim parts of it. I'm gonna magnetize the shield so I can use it in Horus Heresy and in 40k. And I've got some plans to do Dark Angels for 40k as well. But I kind of am more focused on the Horus Heresy side of things, just because I think the miniatures and kit bash potential is very, very cool. You know, it'll be a fun project. I still need to get Age of Darkness. I will, hopefully, in the next month or two. But yes, onwards. Chapter 8. You're looking forward to the scene where the lion explains he's not totally exterminating the Fallen to the other Dark Angels when they call him a demon-possessed heretic. Lol. I will fix my spine. Okay. Yeah, no, I'm excited for 10th edition lore and Dark Angels Codex. It's coming out in spring next year, is what they forecast. So that's going to be really, really exciting. Mimikyu, hi! Hi! I'm going to finish this coffee. And then we continue chapter 8. No, I don't think there's going to be a civil war. I don't think there's going to be a civil war for the Dark Angels. I think what might be interesting... I think what might be interesting would be that the Lion is going to reform the First Legion as the First Legion. Fuck the whole successor chapters bullshit. They can keep their successor chapter colors if they want, but he's going to reform the First Legion as the First Legion. They're going to have some, like, Horus Heresy and Great Crusade veterans as, like, special units. You might have some Risen characters as new characters. You'll probably get the characters that join the line in this book as a special unit, because apparently there's some kind of council. I've got the Arcs of Omen book, so that's a sequel to this, but I've not read it yet. Maybe that's what we'll read next after this, is the lore, because it's a direct sequel and carries on from where this book ends, apparently. And, like, I vaguely know the Arcs of Omen Lion story, but I haven't actually read it, so I don't know the details. I just know the plot points, because I wanted to know what was happening in the narrative. But yeah, I'm very cool. I'm very excited to see how they've written this scene. Yeah, I always wanted to do readings. I just was never really... I never really had a book I was excited to read as much as this. I did start The Hobbit, but in all honesty, it was much more enjoyable as a child. But this I think is more my speed these days. I'm really enjoying this. I should do the Horus Heresy series. That would be so much fun. I've not read any of the Horus Heresy books, and there's a lot of them. Maybe I should just become a Warhammer channel. Just do Warhammer lore readings, and then videos, and then painting and modeling. I don't think there is... If I did that, I feel like I'd Tiger finding excuses to buy more 40k live on stream. No, I don't need excuses. I have a shopping list. What I lack is the money for it. If someone would like give me a small donation of £1,000, that would probably set me up for the next year or two. Thank. You like the Soul Drinkers novels? I've heard good things about the Soul Drinkers omnibus. I've also heard good things about the Night Lords omnibus. And the Eisenhorn series. I know Eisenhorn mostly from the old tabletop Inquisitor game, where you had like these giant models that were metal, and it was like £30 for one miniature, and it was awful. It was awful. You could get the Space Marine Deathwatch Captain Artemis, and he would be like 60 quid. I will tempt you, Reaper. I will have so much content if I could just, like, buy the model kits I want. There's so much shit I want to buy and so many projects I want to start. But, like, once I get the things, then it's just... It will literally take me forever to get through it all. Hi! Wait, next 40k hero Tiger Terminus. Well, what I should do, if I rebranded into a Warhammer channel, I feel like I would have to get a Warhammer-themed VTuber model. Battle Nun Tiger when? I need, like, £1,000 for, like, quality artwork. Because sadly, like, I could get a cheap VTuber model, but it wouldn't look good. It's the sad truth of it. Is, like, there is, like, a certain production standard with VTubers where if you don't really hit it, it just doesn't look and feel right. But more than the art, the hard thing is the rig. Because good quality riggers are hard to find. I do also want a 3D model at some point so I can do gym streams. At the end of the week, we're going to be moving things around. Pink's going to set up her workstation behind me, and I'm going to move the bed into the gym, and the gym is going to be in the middle of the room. So it'll be like we'll have a gym studio stream room. Thank you so much for the gift sub, Reaper. Yeah. Sister Canoness Tiger of the Order of the Violet Floof. Keepers of the Law. You know, I actually made I kit bashed a custom Canoness a couple days ago. She had chains here, but it kind of broke because they were loose and hanging. So I'm gonna need to rebase coat that bit because I put a glue to I put a little rose on there to cover up where it broke. But yeah, I kit bashed that. I was like, I saw a body for like, I think it was an Age of Sigmar Stormcast something. And I thought, you know what? This would make a great Sister of Battle. They can't copyright write the word pauldron. Oh, no, no, no. You see, I wouldn't call... I'd make sure everything looks and is named something a bit more off-brand so that they couldn't actually sue me. It would be like... It would be so off-brand and that it just wouldn't work. They couldn't have a legal argument. Hi, Charles. How are you doing? Yeah. It's like one of those, like, how they've got these 3D printed, like... The 3D printed Grandpa Leo, which is like an off-brand Lionel Johnson. And it looks like, and you know, it's not a terrible model, but it doesn't look as good as like the official one. We'll buy that shit, and it's like, no, no, I want the real thing. And then there's some other ones. But you know, what would I get? I'd like to get Age of Darkness, which is like £150, and I'd like to get another Combat Patrol for Adeptus Sororitas. I'd like to get a box of Mortifiers and a second box of Seraphim, and that would be Sisters of Battle done. I need like a box of Mark 4 Marines, a box of Mark 3 Marines, and I want to get like a couple of different Combat Patrols just because they're really good value for money. I need to paint Pink's white scars whenever she finishes building them. And I want to get some Forge World bits because, like, the Forge World Dark Ages models look amazing. But I also want to do a project where it's like I try and kit bash stuff using like upgrade sprues and like offset things. And yeah, I want to try and kit bash some like Cataphracti into like Forge World equivalents, but plastic, so that they're not quite so expensive. So my plan is to kit bash some Grey Knight parts with like some Horus Heresy Terminators and Tactical Marines to make Deathwing Companions and Knights Cenobium. And I think I have an idea for how to make Dreadwing, whatever they're called, with the fancy plasma cannons that kill everything. I think I've got an idea, but I need to check the parts first before I can confirm whether or not it's viable. But it's like their guns are like two plasma guns stuck together. Because they've got double vents, don't they? So I'm thinking I can sort of like use the framework of the Grey Knight special weapons and then use the special weapons upgrade sprue from the Horus Heresy and put those all together. It's going to be a hard project. It's going to be a really hard project, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I'll stream most of it. But, you know, I need like way more money. Get the things I need. But I say this, it'll still be cheaper than actually buying the things from Forge World, because Forge World prices are like crazy expensive. They're like £75 for 5 models. No thank you. No thank you. None of that in my life, please. It's so wild to you that there are units and gear you have to kit bash. Yeah, I mean, to be fair though, 3D printing isn't the same as kit bashing. You know, I used to have a kit bashed Baneblade tank when my dad made it. It was one of the old, like, late 80s, early 90s White Dwarf magazines had a template where if you, like, laid it over plasticard, you could cut out the parts and you could build a Baneblade specifically to the specifications Games Workshop gave you, and it would count as an official piece. Like, it was literally made out of plasticard and a few bits of old metal Imperial Guard bits that were stuck to it. And that used to be like tournament legal because it followed the schematics that Games Workshop gave you. And these days you couldn't bring that. If it was a new thing, the Games Workshop would never do that these days. Do you remember when they used to encourage kit bashing and customization, and now it's all like, no. Yeah. This is probably one of the nice things my dad did. We used to share that Dark Angel's army. I still have all of his old models, but you know, it's not really the same. But it'll be nice to start again with new things, especially because like the units have all changed so much. Soon I'll be done with Sisters of Battle. I say done. I won't be done. I'll be done collecting them unless like 10th edition means their tanks are now suddenly viable, which they're not. I do like the Exorcist though. It's literally an organ cannon with stained glass and it looks amazing, but I have no idea how to paint it, so I'm not going to get one. Unless like the stats on it turn out to be really, really, really good. Then I'll probably get one. Because I do like to win. Anyway. Speaking of sisters, I got the boarding patrol, so I built some Repentia. Anyway, and I've been slowly painting my sisters. I've got like, the coffee table literally has like 40, 50 Sisters of Battle on it, like, almost finished. Hopefully I'll be able to get to my local shop and do some games in the next week or two, when they're all done. Anyway. A brief rambling intermission over. Let's continue the story. Chapter 8. Actually, I'll drink first. Chapter 8. They have come through the blasted patches of forest where the fortress's guns cut down the approaching enemies, past the tarnished armour and twisted bones of the dead invaders. The assault was overwhelming from all sides, judging by the amount of remains. But it was not just the numbers that brought Red Moon Keep down, and not the gate that gave way. The lion points to a dark fissure at the base of the wall's keep, where dull rockcrete strikes up from the rock of the crater. Melter bombs? Zabriel asks. They would have needed a lot. I have seen Astartes and remains, the lion says grimly. This was not merely an ill-equipped rabble. Oh, they have not sealed the entry point again. They have killed anything that can threaten them on this world, and are overconfident, Zabriel says. The ones I have fought in the forest never expect anything other than easy prey. It seems foolish to scale the walls or breach the gate when the enemy has left us this gift, the lion says. He places his helmet on his head, rises from the crouch, and moves forward, swift and sure. He is aware of the possibility of a trap, but it is outweighed by his desire to get to grips with the foe. An alert and cunning enemy would have reset the perimeter sensors, cut back the forest to give a wider field of view from the wall, and repaired the smashed and shattered sentry guns, whose dead scopes look out over their surroundings. Everything here matches Zabriel's assessment, and giving your foe too much respect can be as costly as giving them too little. The lion reaches the fissure and plunges in. It closes in around him, a dark and uneven tunnel through a wall 20 feet thick. But such is his speed that no sooner is he in than he is out again. There are no laser nets, no mines, no foul sorceries lying in wait for him. Beyond, the only illumination is what splashes in from the outside. He's in a large space. The echoes tell him as much. Even before he switches to the low light setting on his helmet's display, the air entering through his filtration system carries the tang of promethium fuel, engine lubricants, and other such scents. The invaders gained access through a vehicle hangar. Then, rather than a chapter serf's cell or a similar bottleneck at which their ingress might have been more easily halted, unfortunate coincidence or malign design, he has taken this in within a second, and then Zabriel is through behind him, both bolt pistols held ready. No power, Zabriel says, scanning the walls. The conduits here are dead. Then we go further in, the lion replies, and we stay alert for anything which might have sharper senses than our own in this blackness. His helmet sensors pick out a doorway in the deep shadow as of the far side of the chamber, and he heads for it. The doors themselves are crumpled wreckage, smashed aside during the assault. The corridor outside the hangar contains the first casualties within the fortress. The lion's helmet, its pictures straining, just picks up the outlines of the dead, largely of human stock, although many show traits that go well beyond humanity's usual variation in form. The lion switches to infrared and sees the faintest glow of microorganisms still giving off trace amounts of heat as they decompose what flesh remains, and he follows this luminescent trail. There was never such a thing as a standard layout for a fortress constructed by Space Marines, and if there had been, Lionel Johnson's knowledge of it would be thousands of years out of date. But his sense of direction is unimpeded. He wishes to move forwards towards the center of the fortress, and so those are the turnings he takes. Zabriel keeps pace behind him. The lion can hear his gene sons breathing over the Vox link they calibrated before they left the camp, and is pleased at the sound levels that it sounds level and measured. Zabriel is neither racked with misgivings nor overly eager to indulge in violence. Then they encounter the light. Power is not out across the fortress, it appears. Light appears through one doorway, casting long shafts into the gloom through which they have been moving. The lion edges closer and waits. Although the forces of chaos are not entirely predictable, it is reasonable to assume that their quarry will still be gathered where there is light and power. What is more, there are no corpses in the light, indicating that the fortress's current inhabitants have cleared them out of the spaces they use. Although old bloodstains are visible on the floor, Lord, have you marked the absence of the Space Marine bodies so far? Zabriel sub-vocalizes into his vox, and from there into the lion's ear. If the defenders had taken no losses for this entire stretch, it's hard to see how they could have been pushed back. The lion grimaces. You suggest their bodies have been removed, stripped for equipment at least, quite possibly defaced, and utilized in some manner. The lion suppresses a growl. The warriors of this fortress were no gene sons of his, but the thought of such depravity still lashes at his temper. Therefore, when he hears a shuffle of movement in the lit corridor, and a bald-headed shape walks obliviously past the doorway behind which he and Zabriel lurks, he only waits a moment before stepping out after it. The passerby is human, dressed in simple robes of dark red marked with symbols upon which the eye does not wish to linger. He is of no more than average height, and his build is unremarkable. For a second, the lion debates between killing him instantly and silently, or interrogating. The cultist makes the decision for him when two eyes open to the back of his bald head, immediately followed by a wide mouth at the base of the skull, out of which spills a long blue tongue and a shrill scream that somehow goes beyond the simply audible. The lion takes a step forward and lashes out with a punch. The cultist's head disintegrates under the force of the blow, and his body collapses. But the scream lingers, far longer than any normal echo should. A scurrying in the direction from whence the deceased cultist came rapidly becomes thundering of boots and other, less wholesome modes of locomotion, and voices are raised in shouts, whoops, and gibbers. Guard my back, the lion tells Zabriel. He would have preferred to get farther before engaging in open combat, but killing from the shadows was always more Korax's style. They come in a rush, spilling down the corridor and around the corner of it like the filthy waters of flash flood. The lion sees horned heads, purple skin, scales, several tails, cloven hooves instead of feet, and so on. Endless and maddening variations, caused by human genetics being pushed far past their breaking point. He gives them one moment to see him in turn, to let their inferior vision and slower mental prowess comprehend exactly what it is they are attacking. His presence registers on the front rank, such as it is. They begin to slow in terror before he plunges into them. The lion strikes like a thunderbolt, killing with every blow. Bones splinter and skulls split, torsos burst and limbs detach in sprays of blood or ichor. His enemies strike at him with weapons, but on the rare occasion their blows land, they glance off his armour. The dark ceramite in which he is encased turns aside low-caliber auto-pistol rounds, serrated skinning blades, and spiked bludgeons without difficulty. Behind him, Zabriel's bolt pistols roar sporadically. The destroyer is mopping up and executing the few individuals whom the lion's rage does not cut down, and who either seek to launch an attack at the Primarch's back, or finding their own retreat blocked by yet more of their companions, try to flee past him instead. It takes perhaps 5 seconds of bloodshed for the mass of cultist filth to realize that their numbers are no match for what they are facing. Panic spreads backwards as those directly in the lion's path try to get away from him, and the enthusiastic members behind realize that their colleagues in front are going to have to deal with the threat by the time they get there. The rabble tries to reverse direction, but the lion's purpose remains unchanged. He will eliminate anything corrupt in front of him, regardless of whether it attacks him or tries to flee. Some get away. That is inevitable. The sheer weight of numbers is insufficient to overcome the lion, but it is enough for those at the back of the group to make their escape while he is still dealing with the others. The Lord of the First comes to a halt, his hands and forearms dripping red as his greaves and boots caked in blood, and no longer with an enemy within reach, and breathing a little hard. Zabriel activates his chain sword for a moment to finish off those whom the lion merely mortally wounded. I see you have lost none of your deadliness, Lord, he says as he powers the motor down again. If only that were true, the Lionel Johnson mutters. He overwhelmed the horde. Yes, he broke their bones, and was never in danger of succumbing. But unlike during the fight with the predators in the forest, he can now compare it to his previous battles, and he finds himself wanting. There are minor differences, in truth. He is slightly slower, his blows carry a little less force, and his stamina does not seem quite what it once was. He is ready to fight again. He could still fight for hours against such oppositions, but he can feel the difference. There is some malady at work here, he says. I am slower than I should be. Curs would have my flesh off my bones, he adds in a murmur, as a phantom of his cackling raven-haired brother flashes through his memory. The lion has no doubt in the galaxy that the galaxy still contains threats every bit as dangerous as the Night Hunter, even if Conrad Kurz has long since succumbed to the fate he saw laid out for himself all those millennia ago. A new thought occurs to him. Zabriel, are my other brothers also dead? Even more uncertain than the fate of those who stood with your father, Zabriel replies. The Imperium has largely forgotten them, but rumours persist. Some of the circles I have moved in were adamant that the traitor Primarchs are still very real. Even if they are, the Imperium would pretend they were not. The lion's lip curls. He can feel the echoes of Malcador reaching down through the centuries, trying to control what everyone thinks and feels, and endlessly fussing around the edges of the Emperor's grand vision. Then again, the lion's past is not blameless when it comes to secrets. The old man was probably only doing what he thought was right. No, Zabriel continues, the greatest external threat to the Imperium is probably Abaddon. Lionel Johnson looks at him curiously. Ezekiel Abaddon, the first captain of the Sons of Horus, he still lives. Even allowing for inaccuracies in propaganda, what I have heard suggests he has gained power to rival that of any Primarch, Zabriel says. He recently destroyed Cadia. He sees the lion's blank expression and adds, a notable Imperial fortress world near the Eye of Terror. The lion snorts. Well, I will worry about my brother's wayward son should I cross paths with him. In the meantime, we have more immediate concerns. I doubt that those were the only occupants of this place. end. Chapter 8. Welcome, Vex. And yes, the Lionel Johnson is in full armor. Let me get you a picture of him. It's at the start of this book. There he is. Look at this. Look at this old man. He is in power armor, so it actually connects to him and moves like a second skin. And he's also a Primarch, so he's like he's like the Emperor's son, and he's the Emperor's first son. So they are, you know how Space Marines are superhuman? Well, he's like a superhuman among superhumans. Like, many people refer to Primarchs as demigods, in essence. I think we'll get to the end of this section. I want to see how this fortress infiltration goes, and then we'll call it for the night. I don't know how many chapters that's going to take, though, but we'll see. We'll see. I like this little adventure. Minor gods now, due to how they expanded on the Primarch progress now. Yeah. Oh. Right. Metal. I don't think power armor jerks off Space Marines. I don't think that's a thing. At least I don't think that's part of the lore. Can anyone tell me if that's part of the lore? I'm pretty sure they've not gone into that level of detail. I feel confident that they've not gone into that level of detail in Warhammer 40,000. Yeah, I didn't think so, Vex. I genuinely didn't think so. God. Why did they make that a thing in Halo? Like, who decided that that needed to be part of the lore? Really? Really? Oh, God. Right. Shall we continue? Chapter 9. As they press on, the desecration of the Bastion becomes more obvious. The Lion had been angered by the bodies of Chaos Worshippers left to decompose, but it is clear that this was simply because no one now used those areas, and so the carrion was of no concern. Now the walls are covered with markings, filthy scrawls at first, works of petty vandalism, but increasingly a tight, almost neat script on which the eye nonetheless struggles to focus. The Lion turns into a new corridor and struggles with an unfamiliar wave of dizziness as his mind refuses to engage with his surroundings sufficiently to be certain of which way is up. The sensation is not helped by the low, moaning hum that has no apparent point of origin, nor has an increase or decrease in volume since he first noticed it. It is not loud, but it fills the ears. He reaches up to remove his helmet, but Zabriel seizes his arm. Best not, my lord. We do not know what may be in the air. The Lion growls in his throat, but does not shake Zabriel's hand off. He knows the warp can infiltrate the mind, and he understands that Zabriel probably has more experience of such matters, given the centuries he has spent in this new, dark millennium. Once upon a time, Lion would have trusted his physiology to handle any contaminants or poison. But some threats are not just physical. I am getting strong power readings from up ahead, Zabriel adds. If scent and sound cannot reliably lead us to our enemies, energy may serve. We can at least damage whatever our enemies are powering, which may draw them out. The Lion flexes his fingers in readiness and switches his helmet's display to infrared. Some of his disorientation disappears as the writing fades, but the hum does not decrease. They encounter no more resistance before they reach the set of heavily engraved blast doors twice the Lion's height. The Lion switches back to normal vision and takes in the decoration. The robed figure, the wings and sword clasped between his hand. Sanguinius, he murmurs. but his brother's towering image has been defiled, with the depiction of his noble countenance replaced by skulls, space marine skulls, somehow sunk into the metal of the door. Foul sigils have been carved into the metal, as have likenesses of twisted, capering beasts. What once honoured a gene-sire has been transformed into a grotesquerie, and most disturbing of all, it seems to be leaking blood. When the lion flicks back to heat vision a moment, he sees that the fluid is coming out at a temperature of a human body. The door controls, however, seem unaffected. The lion glances over his shoulder. "Stay behind me until we know what we are dealing with," he tells Zabriel, then reaches out and activates the door release. The doors begin to move with what might be the stress scream of damaged mechanisms, but with sounds a lot more like a distant voice in pain. Translucent threads stretch and sag in the air between the door's halves as they part, as though their surfaces were starting to merge into one, then finally snap and swing heavily down the rest against the metal with a faint, sizzling sound. The space beyond is gloomy, lit by a sickly yellow-green glow from one side and thick with fumes. The hum is louder, and a rough voice speaks from out of the muck. "He comes, the flawed knight. Did I not tell you?" The voice has the tone and timbre of a space marine, but the words are not immediately followed by an attack. What is more, it seems as though the lion's presence, identity, or nature is the cause of some uncertainty. "You were expecting me," he demands, striding into the chamber. "Show yourself." He cycles through the vision options of his helmet and his targeting auspex as pick out the other occupants just as the voice speaks. "What master do you serve?" it demands, as cold and unforgiving as the spaces between the stars. The chamber is a hall of considerable size, which the lion presumes would once have been used as a stratagem by the Space Marines garrisoned here. It has clearly been badly damaged in the battle for the fortress. Many of the walls are pockmarked with high-impact craters, or spider-webbed with cracks. There is no equipment he recognizes, no hololiths or cogitator banks. Instead, thick and glistening cables snake across the floor, connected to a huge, clear-sided vat of fluid against one wall. It is from this that the glow emanates, but also picks out the figures standing in front of it. There are 7 Space Marines, none uncorrupted. 5 appear to be a loose squad armed with bolt guns, a familiar outline of their power armor interrupted by a horn here and a bulbous and misshapen limb there. Behind them are 2 others, a tall shape swathed in a robe, holding a barbed sword, and one whose shoulders seem unnaturally bulky, even for an armored transhuman. Until the lion realizes that he is wearing animal skins as a cloak, he can recognize no insignia in the gloom, but their armor is decorated with a repeated pattern of staring golden eyes. Most importantly, they do not yet know if he is friend or foe. To them he is a massive shape in unfamiliar black armor, and even though his breastplate bears the winged sword of his legion, it seems that this is not an unambiguous signal at these times. Lionel Johnson has never been one to seek the awe of others, nor indeed pay much attention to it. But he knows that his very nature as a Primarch often instills such feelings. He tries to draw on that now as he crosses the floor, close the difference between them, making himself the focus of their attention. "I serve myself," he declares. "Whom do you call master?" He frowns at a strange sensation, like fingertips of gossamer trailing across his brain. His mind is like a blade, the tall Space Marine says in a low voice. The lion's lip curls. "Stay out of my head, witch," he snarls, without any attempt to hide his aggression or disgust. The muzzles of 5 bolters that had been held half lowered snap up to cover him, in truth. But the lion does not slow. He is nearly close enough, and they cannot know his capabilities. "Stop where you are," says the cold-voiced one in the furs. The lion ignores him as blithely as he would ignore any order from any space marine. Those hungry for power want to be obeyed more than they want anything else. They will repeat themselves and delay giving a command to fire simply because a dead man cannot obey instructions. I said, the lion pounces into the center of the firing line. The force of impact bowls two warriors over in a clatter of ceramite. The lion pivots on his left arm and comes down with his feet under him, the use of the remainder of his momentum to wrench one of his victims off the floor and hurl him through the air into the cloaked sorcerer before the witch can react. Then the fight starts in earnest. His opponents are not Primarchs, but they are Space Marines. Their reflexes are still faster than those of mortals. Bolt shell ricochets off the power pack in the lion's armor. Another bounces off his left pauldron. He dives back the way he came, seeking to bait them out into shooting at him and hitting each other. But the traitors are too well disciplined. Instead, another one jerks and starts to fall as bolt shells strike him from a different angle. Zabriel approaches out of the gloom at a charge, both pistols firing. The lion is still moving, and his fist connects with the faceplate of one of the traitors. Ceramite shatters and the warrior flies backwards, but another lunges forward with one hand extended, his gauntlet fingers now either shaped into talons or somehow melded with disfigured flesh beneath. The lion catches his attacker's wrist and pivots once more, swinging his opponent around and using him as a bludgeon. The Astartes he bore to the ground, but whom he did not know, and thrown to the sorcerer, regains his feet, just in time to be flattened once more. Zabriel has advanced past his victim and charges at the sorcerer with a yell. And force sword clashes with chain sword as a shower of sparks and a snarl of teeth. Enough, the commander thunders, advancing on the lion at speed. An energized weapon head crackles into life. A thunder hammer, ready to discharge with armor-splitting force. The lion watches him come, sees the start of the swing, then lashes out with the edge of his hand. He strikes the hammer just behind the head. Such is the combination of the force of this blow and the Chaos Lord's attack. The half snapped and the head flies clean off. This traitor Astartes staggers into the lion, unbalanced by the unexpected lack of resistance to his strike. The lion tosses him upward by his furs. The Chaos Lord flails, unused to being manhandled in such a manner, and he starts to descend. As he starts to descend, the lion grabs his enemy and forces him downwards across the one bent knee. The traitor's armor fractures along with his spine, and the lion dumps him off to the ground. Zabriel screams. The lion looks up, sees the sorcerer bathing the Dark Angel in a hellish beam of light emanating from the eye slits of his helm, and snatches a fallen bolt gun off the floor. He breaks off the trigger guard so his finger fits, and fires the weapon at the sorcerer's back. The bolts strike home, the sorcerer staggers, his concentration breaks, and the spell sputters out. Zabriel recovers himself and swings his chainsword. It is a weapon designed to chew through flesh and light armor, but not solid ceramite plate. But Zabriel angles it perfectly. The blow catches the sorcerer in the neck joint. The traitor jerks, and blood spurts as monomolecular teeth tear into his body. Zabriel places one hand on the back edge of his chainblade and forces it deeper, seeking to decapitate his enemy. The lion throws the bolt gun away. Even that brief contact through his armor felt dirty somehow, and stamps on the traitor whose helmet he shattered with his fist, bursting his skull. That makes 3 dead. As the sorcerer's head clatters to the floor, the rest are still in the fight, but they are all injured to one degree or another. The lion can sense their shock. They were not ready for him. Then the air shimmers with the distinctive disturbance of a teleport flare, and 2 hulking shapes shudder into the distance. They were space marines once, Now they were swollen almost beyond recognition, their monstrous physiques having burst out between the plates of their armour and fusing with it. Their exposed flesh crawls with veins that pulse with foul energy, and they are bedecked with twisted guns that extrude from their bodies like growth. Only their heads still seem the same size as they once would have been. They might look comical, tucked away in the mass of flesh and muscle surrounding them, were the rest of their forms not obviously so very deadly. The lion reaches instinctively for a sidearm that is no longer there. He only wastes half a second doing so, but that is enough. His newly arrived enemies have no such problem. A rocket strikes him in the chest and detonates. The light and noise is indescribable, all-encompassing. He is thrown backwards by the force of the explosion and lands against a cracked wall with his armour screaming warnings at him, but no sooner has he come to rest than a hail of shells, small caliber but still dangerous, batters into him. The Lord of the First scrambles to one side, trying to get clear of the barrage, but a monstrous shape looms up through the scree of warning glyphs in his helmet and swings a fist the size of an ammunition crate. The blow strikes the lion with such a force that he is knocked not just backwards into the wall behind him, but also through it. Chunks of ferrocrete tumble down, and one strikes his helm as he struggles to rise. Dust is everywhere. The monstrosity that has just struck him bellows in murderous rage and smashes at the wall, seeking to enlarge the hole sufficiently to follow him. A thunderous explosion a few yards away indicates that its companion intends to simply shoot its way through. The lion rolls away to get out of the current line of fire, and he tries to take stock. His armour is cracked, and his helm's readout suggests that his power pack may go critical if it is smashed through another wall. His instincts are to put distance between himself and the monstrous pursuers, but he has no ranged weapons with which to engage them if he does so. If he remains close, he will have no cover from point-blank shots, and he puts himself within reach of their ferocious strength. He could probably handle one of them, despite the sorcerous malady that still claws at him, but they have already shown their ability to work together. He looks around for something to even the odd, and his heart leaps in sudden hope. The chamber is even more battle-damaged than the one he so recently and violently exited, so much so that the entire back wall has already come down, and he recognizes the nature of it as an armory. It has been pillaged, of course, but there is always hope that the raiders miss something. The lion slips between weapon racks, hunting for anything he can use. An explosion shakes the room as one of the Chaos Worshippers' foul guns spits out an incendiary charge that punches a hole a yard in diameter through the lion's temporary cover. The lion keeps his head down and continues searching. A space marine would have his own weapons out with him at all times, but there was clearly a purpose for this armory. Ammunition, spare weapons, more specialist and esoteric pieces, and items like grenades from which a space marine would restock his own supply as needed. The lion dislodges a magazine of bolt shells and grabs on to it in case he finds something he can load it into. Something else is part covered by a fallen piece of the ceiling. He snatches it from its resting place. Its design is not entirely familiar, but it appears that frag grenades have not changed much in 10,000 years. One of the chaos monsters stomps into view, its left foot still sheathed in corrupted ceramite, and the other completely bare, the size of a normal space marine's chest. The lion primes the grenades and throws it with effortless accuracy. It lands under the traitor's descending right foot and detonates. The traitor howls in a voice that sounds more metallic than organic and is knocked off balance by the blast. The shot it was about to send towards the lion skew wide, ripping more holes into the abused weapons racks. The lion sprints the other way, but the end of the row is suddenly obstructed by the second mutated traitor. Guns erupt from the Chaos Space Marine's forearms. The lion throws himself into a slide as they vomit black-tinged flames into the space where his head was a moment before. He comes up again within the traitor's guard. The thing's massive physique may give it immense strength, but it is no longer fully protected by armor, and the lion slams a fist into exposed ribs. It is like punching steel. However, the lion has punched steel before, and it was the metal that came off worse. The monster staggers, and the lion takes the opportunity to rip its weapon out in a shower of blood, oil, and other more unpleasant liquids. The new blood-slicked gun muzzle in the shape of a howling demon's maw immediately sprouts from the thing's shoulder and levels itself at the lion's face. He ducks before a melter blast takes his head off, but that leaves him open to the immense fist that crashed into him instead. The lion manages to roll with the punch a little, but the force of it still sends him flying again. He comes up desperately and throws the bolt magazine at the creature, and its next blast atomizes the entire thing only a couple of feet from its face. The resulting explosion sends the traitor staggering, and the lion retreats again before it can recover. Is this what chaos is? An ever-morphing, ever-changing threat that twists the familiar and adapts even the most punishing blows to even the most punishing blows one can strike at it. His determination to bring these abominations down has not decreased, but he needs something which can give him an edge. He reaches the back of the armory and, for lack of better options, scrambles through into the chamber beyond. This is smaller and hung with banners that appear to mark notable battles or great acts of heroism, although they have all been defaced in one manner or other. Even amidst the vandalism, the lion gets the sense of quiet devotion. This was not a functional space, like the strategium or the armory, but somewhere warriors of the Ruby Crescents came for contemplation. Something streaks past his head, and one of the banners on the far wall is consumed by crawling fire. The traitors are coming, one down each side of the armory. He can stand and fight them both, or he can try the door to his right and retreat again. It galls him to do such a thing, but he has still not found anything that he can use to turn to his advantage. Zabriel is still back there, though, brought into this fight by his belief in the lion, a belief that overcame 4 centuries of hatred and bitterness. He is the only son the lion knows of at this moment, and the lion will not leave him to die. The fire is raging, consuming everything it touches and filling the air with smoke. However, the sensors on the lion's helmet do not register particulates of ash or atoms of carbon. Instead, the ambient moisture around him increases as grey clouds billow across his vision and obscure the oncoming enemies for a moment. The 2 sides of the wrecked wall in front of him almost look like tree trunks, with a low canopy of branches above him instead of a ceiling. The contours of the ruined building material in his feet do not change, but now naked rock overlays his vision. The pile of rubble in front of him resolves into a boulder, slick and wet, and a glimmer catches his eye. This is not the rough surface of ferrocrete, nor is it the dull finish of structural rebar. The hum in his ears is gone, replaced by a sweeter song. The lion reaches out, and his gauntlet closes around the grip of a sword. He seizes it and pulls. It holds fast for a moment, but then slides clear with the faintest whisper of metal on stone. It is a beautiful power blade, the perfect size for the lion. The hilt is a simple crossguard, into which is worked a winged design around a miniaturized version of the sword itself, the symbol of the Dark Angels, the sigil that the lion made his own. His thumb finds the activation stud, The power cell holds charge. The blade's disruption field crackles into existence, causing the barely visible vapor in the air around it to flash into steam. The lion smiles, and the forest, illusory, real, or something in between, fades away. His surroundings once more take on the sharp edges of battle-damaged walls, and the air is filled with smoke, through which two hulking shadows are approaching. The lion charges. The corrupted starters are taken off guard by this change of tactics, and shots from one track slightly wide of him as he rushes the other, one whose foot he detonated a grenade under. The monstrosity bellows in anger and tries to retarget his weapons on his rapidly closing form, but the lion unleashed with purpose is too quick. Now he has teeth. His blade shears through the Chaos Worshipper's right elbow and sends the massive fist clattering to the floor, and he finishes his momentum with the shoulder barge that propels it staggering backwards into the wall. The lion ducks, his instincts taking over, as a shell from the other traitor blazes over his head from behind and strikes his wounded assailant full in the chest. He lunges up from his crouch and extends the sword, the powered blade driving into the crater left by the shot before the monster's unholy metabolism can heal it, and he skewers the creature into the wall, severing its spine. The lion turns away, ripping the blade loose and shearing through more internal organs as he does so, and the kill is confirmed by another errant shot from the other heretic that detonates in the first one's skull. The lion draws the skinning blade from his belt and whips it into the air into the other creature's eye. The former space marine howls in agony, which ends a moment later as the lion reaches it, impales it with the power blade, and wrenches it upwards. The blade's energy field and his strength combine to slice right through the traitor's upper body, bisecting its skull, and it drops at his feet. The lion breathes hard for a moment, and then turns and runs back the way he came. Through the armory and out into the strategium, he arrives just in time to see Zabriel wrestling with the last upright traitor, angle one of his bolt pistols, and put two shots through the enemy's helmet from a foot away. He looks over to the lion, and his relief is apparent just from the way his shoulders sag. What were those things, he asks. They're dead now, the lion answers. That is all that matters. The fur-clad commander, whose back the lion broke, is still twitching. Zabriel walks over to him and aims his bolt pistol at the fallen heretic's head. Wait, the lion instructs him. He crosses the door and glares down at his broken adversary. Your solicitor is dead. What must I do to rid myself of this malady that impedes me? Impedes you? The traitor hisses, his breath coming in staccato gasps. It takes the lion a moment to realize that he is laughing through the pain. You slaughtered my best and broke my back as though I were a child. What manner of being are you that you consider yourself impeded when you can do such things? The lion reaches up and removes his helm. Perhaps this creature knew his face, or perhaps not. It doesn't matter, nor is he concerned about the risk of exposing himself briefly to the air. This is the first time he will declare himself in 10,000 years, and he will not do it from behind a ceramite faceplate. I am Lionel Johnson, Primarch of the Dark Angels and son of the Emperor. The heretic's eyes go wide, and there is no doubt or denial in them. Then he smiles, exposing teeth that are now merely jagged points. There is no malady at work here, my lord. You simply got old. The lion stares at him for a moment, then he turns away, breathing heavily, pursued by the clean bite of the truth. Zabriel's bolt pistols speak one final time, and then there is silence. End. Chapter 9. That was a really nice I really liked that section. That felt super actiony. Yeah, that was fantastic. I think those creatures were obliterators. I think that's probably the most likely thing. Thank you for the gift subs, Reaper. Thank you so much. I sadly have work tomorrow, so I think that's going to be all we're going to get through tonight. I didn't plan this to be a super long stream. I hope you all enjoyed. We're going to be continuing with chapter 10, same time next week. Hopefully we'll be able to go a bit longer next time, though. But yeah, I really want to get through this book. I'm really enjoying this. It's probably the best book I've read in a very long time. I'm glad you enjoy it. I like doing these reading streams. They're quite fun. They are a comfy time. I should pick someone to raid. You know what? No one's really doing anything like this, but there's someone who I haven't raided before, but I recall them raiding me. Who's playing Darkest Dungeon 2, which I'm very curious about. Because I love Darkest Dungeon. I still haven't finished the first Darkest Dungeon. Yeah, Julians. Don't worry. The first part is already on. Is it on? I don't know if it's published yet. But we'll be back same time next week. Let's come up with a raid message. Grimdark raid. Yes. Yes. We're gonna continue this book reading later. And don't worry, this will be on YouTube. I'm gonna make a playlist so you guys can do the thing. I'm gonna try and put the YouTube the timestamps in it so you can skip like the intermission segments between chapters. I do know how to do that. I just don't always do that for the VODs. But this is easily segmentable because like obviously it's books and it's got chapters and there's like in-betweeny bits between the chapters where we hang out and stuff. But yeah. My first stream back from my holiday. I hope you all enjoyed it. Tomorrow we're going to be continuing Elden Ring. I forgot how to play though. But we're going to do Elden Ring and hopefully I won't die too much. I hope you all have a lovely time. Thank you for choosing to spend your evening with me. I love you all. Have a good day, night, wherever you are in the world, okay? Bye. Mwah.